This is going to be a shoulder-to-shoulder battle now. Nelissen goes on the left. The rest are following. Martinelli is here too for the Polti team as they come up towards the line. Nelissen is taking... Oh, and they've gone! They've gone one after the other. They've hit the barriers. Nelissen was not looking where he was going. That was a disaster on the line there, as I think the victory has gone to Team Polti and Abdu Japarov, and certainly it was not the fault of Abdu Japarov. Nelissen himself, who has already broken his collarbone this year with a big crash, was on his comeback, hit the barriers on the inside in the sprint.
Welcome back to the Cycling Iceberg Podcast. You just heard the commentary of the finish of the first regular stage of the 1994 Tour de France. That ended in a mass sprint with a terrible crash just before the finish line. It has a whole story behind it, which I will untangle. But why the 1994 Tour de France? Well, that was the last time the Tour de France started in Lille, where this year's Grand Départ will be held. While the commentary you just heard was the first regular stage, there had already been a prologue, which, to be honest, is worthy of its own iceberg story, but I will briefly commentate on what happened there. The prologue was 7 kilometers on a twisty, turny course through the streets of Lille, and the Brit Chris Broadman, he took the win. This was special because he completed the 7-kilometer course 15 seconds faster than Miguel Indurain. Adding to that, Broadman raced for the small French Gan team. He had been focused on the hour record. In an 8-month period, it fell 4 times between him and his rival, Jermaine Aubry. In that prologue, adding to the value of Broadman's victory, was that he caught Luc Leblanc, his 1-minute man. Leblanc had previously been very dismissive about his hour record. The Frenchman claimed that probably half of the professional peloton could beat it, but now Broadman was in the yellow jersey. However, there were several other riders that also had their eyes on the yellow jersey. Back then there was still several intermediate sprints in the stages where riders could earn bonification seconds, so especially for sprinters expecting to do well in the team time trial of stage 3, it was interesting to target these seconds, because together with the seconds at the line, this was their best chance at getting the yellow jersey. The Tour always started with a prologue, so for sprinters, they needed these bonus seconds if they ever wanted to wear the yellow jersey. After the prologue, the first regular stage took the riders from Lille to Armentières, a 240 km stage pretty much looping around. The finish was some 20 kilometers outside of Lille in a town right on the French-Belgian border. It was pan-flat, so a mass sprint was expected, and there were so many contenders for the first sprint. Probably 10, maybe 15 if you exaggerate a little bit. That's how many riders could win the stage. To name a few of the ones topping most of the lists in the newspapers, Johan Museeuw, Olaf Ludwig, Temujin Abduljaparov, Nicolas Minali, and Jean-Paul van Poppel. Another favourite for the stage win to consider was Wilfried Nelissen, a Belgian racing for Histor. He was 24 years old and with that relatively young. But a year prior he had already won the second stage in the Tour. He wore the yellow jersey for 3 days due to the time bonuses he collected there. In 1994, Nelissen continued to build a legacy for himself. He won a handful of races in the spring, including Omloop het Volk, now known as Omloop het Nieuwsblad. A week before the Tour, he became Belgian champion by winning the sprint of a small group. He clearly was ready for the Tour, despite a collarbone fracture earlier that season. In this stage, Nelissen decided to fully focus on the stage win. Where other sprinters got involved in the 3 intermediate sprints for 6, 4 and 2 bonus seconds, he saved everything for the final sprint. He had no belief that he could do well in the team time trial and would rather win the stage early on, especially as it finished right on the Belgian-French border. With 5 kilometers to go, Histor hit the front. In modern cycling, we would for sure say this is way too early, and honestly, in 1994, many commentators thought the same. There was less consensus about how to prepare a sprint. It was a lot more chaotic at the time. You had long trains, short trains, riders with just a lead out, some riders completely on their own. It was chaotic. But 5k, that was a bit too early. Normally you would see most sprinters make a move for maybe 3.5k to go. However, Histor kept the pace really high, and as the final was quite technical, it was difficult for the others to move up, so it wasn't the worst. However, they did hit the front too early, because with 2k to go, only Marc Sergeant was left. That was the lead out for Nelissen. Luckily for Nelissen, T-Mobile came to the rescue because with 2k to go, the German outlet took over. Sergeant positioned Nelissen perfectly. Both of them slotted in right behind Ludwig, the sprinter for T-Mobile. The German team, sponsored by the telephone company, set the pace until the final kilometer, but Sergeant knew what he was doing. He started leading out Nelissen, bringing him to the sprint in pole position. Just before the final corner with 300 to go, Sergeant started to decelerate a bit. For Nelissen, this was his sign to go. He launched the sprint, perhaps a tad early, with 275 meters to go. He had a strong acceleration, but Abdujaparov launched right from his wheel. The Belgian and the Uzbek were sprinting shoulder to shoulder in the slightly downhill finish. With 150 meters to go, there was another slight bend to the right. Nelissen lost a little bit of speed coming out of this bend. He had launched early into the headwind after all. Several riders came alongside. There was opening on the side. There were 5-6 riders going side by side towards the finish line. Who would take the win? One of the riders in this mix was Silvio Martinello, who deviated towards the right. To avoid crashing, Nelissen moved towards the barriers. Going all out, he was looking downwards, trying to stay as aerodynamic as possible. He still had a margin to the barriers, but not to a policeman standing there to guard the course. He sprinted straight into the police officer. Nelissen hit the deck hard with 4 other sprinters. The Belgian champion was taken to the hospital with a severe concussion. Laurent Jalabert from the Once team was also taken to the hospital. He broke his eye socket, cheekbone, collarbone and lost several teeth in the crash. The policeman that caused the crash broke his leg on 2 different places. The question of course is, what was a policeman doing on the course during a mass sprint in the Tour de France? Well, the answer is a bit complicated. The Tour, for the standards at the time, had done everything they could to secure the safety of the riders at the finish. They were very concerned about spectators getting on course, injuring themselves and or the riders, and eventually potentially suing them. That's why the final 5 kilometers of the course were fenced off, with in the final 300 meters the feet of the barriers being covered up as well, and that last one was really for the riders, because there had been some crashes by riders going onto the feet of the barriers. However, with a modern look at it, we would of course question, why is there a corner at 300 meters to go? Why is there a bend at 150? Why is the finish slightly downhill? But at the time, that was far less of a concern. The sprints were a lot more Wild West, even if you think that what happened now is already on the edge. Like, how do the sprinters nowadays avoid colliding with each other? How do they stay on their bikes? In the 90s, it was all a bit more crazy, and certainly they just sprinted wherever the finish was drawn up. In that light, the tour organizers also arranged police officers to patrol the finish area. The police officers were supposed to remain on course, but in a safe zone. This zone was created for the gendarmes by placing vertical plastic advertisements along the barriers. These zones were just about big enough for a normal human being to stand, and police officers were instructed to face directly the other way, looking at the spectators, making sure nobody jumped the fence. However, the police officer in question didn't follow the protocol. He was looking directly towards the riders because he had agreed to take a picture for a spectator he met earlier that day. Nelissen hit him at over 60 kilometers per hour. The sprint was extremely fast due to the slightly downhill nature of it. Nelissen was able to pick up racing a month after his crash, luckily. He took one more win that season. In the media, it said that he's never been the same after the crash anymore, but that's not really true. His 1995 season was actually really good. He took 15 wins, including a second Belgian title. However, the moment that his career really changed was in 1996 when he had a career-ending crash. He crashed into a wooden bollard at high speed during Gent-Wevelgem. He had a triple open fracture of his tibia. His kneecap was broken in 7 places, his femur was also fractured, and in fact he lost so much blood his life was in danger. After an extremely long and intense recovery process, Nelissen returned to the peloton in August of 1997. However, his return was unfortunately not long-lived. His knee was never able to fully recover, and he retired from cycling in early 1998. He became a director sportif, but he was forced to stop working in 2014 because of his knee injury. The second crash, the one in Gent-Wevelgem, was deemed to be a working incident. This would have given Nelissen a right on a hefty insurance fee, but because he made that brief comeback, his right on the monthly compensation of roughly €6,500 was foregone. Instead, he was declared 66% disabled, giving him the right to social security benefits. Nelissen, however, never complained about it in the interviews afterwards. Jalabert said that the crash changed his way of riding. He gave up competing in dangerous bunch sprints, apparently under pressure from his wife. He, with the help of a lot of EPO, managed to transform into a climber. In 1995 he won the Vuelta and finished 4th in the Tour. Later he would win the KOM jersey twice. As for the police officer, he received a lot of hate for his actions. The director sportif of Nelissen called it Tour de France unworthy, stating they were at a kermesse rather than at a sporting event. The police officer changed phone numbers and lived an anonymous life. The stage was eventually won by Abdujaparov, who for once had nothing to do with the super chaotic sprint finish. Normally, the Taxentero was the one making headlines by sprinting recklessly and causing another one or himself to crash. But this time, it was Nelissen who looked downwards, but above all, it was the problem that a policeman was standing on the middle of the course. Had Nelissen looked up, he could have perhaps avoided him, but really at such speeds, the police officer should have never been on the course taking a picture. Abdujaparov, while he won the stage, didn't manage to take the yellow jersey. He gained 32 bonus seconds in that stage, but his prologue was too weak. As he only managed 6 bonus seconds the following day, his hopes of the yellow jersey had gone. Boardman held the yellow jersey until the team time trial, after which Johan Museeuw took the race lead. This year, another Belgian sprinter is targeting success at the Lille Grand Départ. Tim Merlier has been on form this season, and he will be hoping to take the first yellow jersey in a town super close to the Belgian border, and for him even closer because he grew up in Kortrijk, literally just on the other side of the border. Stage 1 sprints, be it with or without a prologue, are always super hectic. There are so many sprinters that can see their dream of a yellow jersey come true that there is typically a crash. But let's hope that this year there is no police officer on the course and everything happens just that slightly bit less chaotic than in 1994.